Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk about similarities between Moses, yes, that one of the most prominent figures in the whole Bible, and megachurch pastors. If it sounds interesting to you or if it makes your eyebrows raise, stick around to find out more. Also, I'm doing this outside and it's 8 a.m. and I hope that my neighbors don't think that I'm crazy for speaking English so early in the morning in front of the camera. I'm doing this second time around because the first time the rooster was shouting so loudly that I had to re-record this, and let's pray that this time around it will be quieter. So let's get to our topic. Sorry for my rant. What do these two characters, Moses and megachurch pastors, have in common? Let me answer that right away. The similarities are not really between them as characters, they are more between how their followers, how their listeners treat them and follow them. I mean, it might sound anticlimactic, but what did you hope to hear? Of course, Moses and megachurch pastors are not similar. I also promise that the title of the video is not a clickbait. Just stick around and give me a chance to say what I wanted to say. And of course, I want this video to not just be entertaining, I want it to have some practical value, and that's why we will look at this topic from the point of spirituality and some of the issues that may come with these similarities that we will discuss later. And I wanted to outline two specific problems, two specific issues we may face. The first one of them is growing indifferent to God's voice, and the second one is shifting the focus of our praise from God to other things, mainly people. I also will be looking down sometimes because I have a laptop here, and I will read from it, so that's why I'm looking down. When it comes to the character of Moses and the topic of idols, the stories that usually comes to mind is the one described in the Exodus chapter 32. In it, Moses goes up Mount Sinai to talk to God and to get commandments from him, and when he comes back he sees that Israelites have made this golden calf to worship. So they made an idol basically. And even though this story it is quite interesting and really shows how we as people might act out of stupidity, however, I'd say that talking about idols in this perspective is not really relevant today. Why? Because hopefully none of us is building physical statues to name them gods and to praise them. Of course, every one of us has idols that can be things that we spend our time with the most, but I'm not talking about this. Today I want to talk about idolatry from a different perspective. Reflecting on the story of the Israel's exodus from Egypt, I'm always amazed at how these people that saw God so clearly and directly, they literally saw the Red Sea parting, they saw the water coming out of the rock, they saw all the plagues in Egypt, they saw the cloud pillar by day and they saw the fire pillar by night. They still found some reasons to doubt God, and that is really interesting to me, because how could that happen? They saw all the miracles, but whom God used to perform those miracles? Through whose hands did God perform all the miracles? The answer is obvious: through the hands of Moses. I think that's where one of the main issues lies. Let's look at Exodus 24, 12 through 18. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain, stay there, and I will give you the tablets of stone on which I have inscribed the instructions and commands, so you can teach the people." So Moses and his assistant Joshua set out, and Moses climbed up the mountain of God. Moses told the elders, "Stay here and wait for us until we come back. Aaron and Hur are here with you. If anyone has a dispute while I'm gone, consult with them." Then Moses climbed up the mountain, and the cloud covered it. And the glory of the Lord settled down on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the seventh day, the Lord called to Moses from inside the cloud. To the Israelites at the foot of the mountain, the glory of the Lord appeared at the summit like a consuming fire. Then Moses disappeared into the cloud. As he climbed higher up the mountain, he remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. And I think that's one of the key issues. Israelites, they couldn't speak to God directly. Only Moses could. And God spoke to Israelites through Moses. From the very beginning, he was the mediator between the Creator and the people. If you really think about it, almost all of the miracles described in the Bible, they were done through the hands of people, except only for those that were done by Jesus Christ. Of course. In Exodus 32:23, the people said, "Make us gods who will lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt." Just think about it. We don't know what happened to Moses, so make us gods. For me, this statement clearly shows how people treated Moses. They said, we don't know what happened to Moses, so make us gods. Which means that they treated Moses as a god. Kind of like, of course, it doesn't mean that all of them literally thought that Moses was God, but he was like a god figure to them. He was their leader, but he was more than just a leader, if it makes sense. Also, think about this statement a bit more. They said, this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. But was it really Moses who brought them out of Egypt? Of course not. It was God who brought them out of Egypt. Exodus 24:3 says, Then Moses went down to the people and repeated all the instructions and regulations the Lord had given him. All the people answered with one voice, We will do everything the Lord has commanded. And that was said right before Moses went up Mount Sinai. So why did they follow so fast and so hard? They literally built a physical calf to worship. I think that the reason really lies here, and this is really important. I think that they shifted the praise and trust from God to the human he used. While reading Exodus carefully, we may see that people, they listened to Moses and Aaron really well. Usually, most of the times, they obeyed them as their leaders. But on the contrary, they didn't listen to God that well, and they whined and they complained about a lot of things to God, to Moses, but about God, and they disobeyed the orders of the God and Lord. And honestly, we can be the same way sometimes. To be real with you all, I think it's really easier to listen to what people say than to what God says, because it's harder to hear his voice than to hear the real tangible voice of the person directly in front of you. And sometimes even when we hear him, we ignore him and we do not listen to what he says. Of course, sometimes God speaks through people, as in this story he spoke through Moses, but sometimes he speaks directly to you, and it's through different things, through your environment, through the things you notice, and through your thoughts. I remember one pastor at a conference once said, if you come to a church and you see a problem, for example, you see that there is no small groups, or you see that the floors are dirty, you see that for a reason. That reason might be because you may be the person who will do that. Maybe God shows you this problem for you to fill in the gap. And I think that's a really beautiful idea, because we sometimes notice a problem, and instead of doing something to fix the problem, we go up to the pastor and we say, oh, what a terrible church, why the floors are so dirty and stuff. And I think that's not really good. So God speaks in many different ways, and it's our task to learn to hear him properly, and when we hear the voice, to obey it carefully. And that covers the first section of the video, the part about growing indifferent to God's voice. The second problem, shifting authority from God to his servants. And this leads to a big issue called idolatry. Let's be honest, no matter how good the preacher is, no matter how much we admire the pastor, all of those people, they are just people. They're still human. They are wonderful humans, but they're still creations of the great Creator. Should we love them? Absolutely. More than that, Matthew 5:44 says, But I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. So we must love all of the people, even our enemies. But first of all, we need to remember who stands at the top, who we give our praise and worship to. We shouldn't exalt people to the level of saints, no matter how good they are. Okay, this to some of you this may sound really obvious, and of course, like, why should we praise people? This is direct idolatry. But trust me, I think this problem is really deep. Take, for example, mega churches. I think most of them sermons there may look as one-man concerts and shows, rather than a piece of day where you can praise the God and hear his word. Think of the biggest Christian bands. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with attending music shows where you listen to Christian music, to worship music, but that's not really the point of the sermon. It is just that sometimes it is too over the top, and it's more about the person who sings than about the person we sing to, and that's a problem, in my opinion. I've even seen memes floating about this, and the meme is megachurch pastors, it's all about Jesus. Also megachurch pastors. Yeah, I think that describes it really well. Humans are simple creatures. It's so much easier to praise and admire the person who stands right in front of us, the one who is parting the sea, the one who is extracting water from a rock, than God sometimes. And that's the second problem, shifting the focus of our hearts. Praise. In the end, I wanted to give you some practical advices on how we can battle these problems, these spiritual issues that are not as rare, and everybody of us can encounter them sometimes. And sometimes it may be not as obvious as in the story of Exodus. And I'm not claiming to be any spiritual guru or like the best Christian on earth. These are the things that I've been taught and just general ideas of what we can do in these situations. And the first one is prayer. It may sound a bit cliche, but I think it's really an essential part of any Christian's life. We must ask God to keep our hearts sensitive to His voice. We must learn to hear His voice, and that's why we must pray and ask God to teach us to hear His voice. As written in 1 Kings 19:11-13. Go out and stand before me on the mountain, the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire there was the sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. A gentle whisper, not always a burning bush like Moses saw. And the second piece of the puzzle is the Bible. To understand God's greatness and to know how to distinguish it from just people performing miracles through His Word, we need to know more about God. And what the best way to do it? Of course, through reading Bible. As 1 Corinthians 8:1-3 says, "But while knowledge makes us feel important, it is love that strengthens the church. Anyone who claims to know all the answers doesn't really know very much." We must study Scripture not to feel important or wise, but to know God. And by doing that, we will really learn to think critically and to listen to what people say and distinguish their words from the God's words, if that makes sense. If you stuck around for this long, thank you so much. That really means a lot, and from now on I will post regularly on this channel. I'm interested in discovering more about Bible, some interesting stories from the Bible, or any topics regarding Christianity and religion in general. So if you are interested, subscribe to see more, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.